welcome to the Jamez Report. I'm your host, Mr. Jamez. I hope you guys enjoyed every little bit of that. If that gives you any indication of what today is going to bring, I said I was bringing a special guest back, and I've only had one special guest on this show. So, Michelle, welcome back to the show. Say hi to the people watching at home.
Hi, everybody.
So, I told you I was bringing a special guest, and I also said in my earlier videos that I would be doing a special video today. So, today, myself and Michelle Hill are going to break down our male top 10 list. So we're going to probably get in some disagreements. We're probably going to hear some things from the old school broad herself that maybe wrestlers I don't even know that much about. And no offense, it was a compliment. So sit back, relax, enjoy. Once you hear this list, please put in the comments below your top 10 or where you would put different wrestlers on our lists. As always, hit that like, hit that subscribe button so you always get an up-to-date video from your boy, Mr. Jamez. When I drop a video, you're the first to know, and that way you never miss out on this action. So, Michelle, how the heck are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I can't complain. So, earlier this week, I asked you, break down your top 10 wrestlers, male wrestlers of all time.
Yes, and that was a very hard thing to do because as long as I've been around, I had very many wrestlers that I liked back in the day, and there's some that I like now, but I stuck with basically my older wrestlers that I knew.
Is there something special about the older wrestlers compared to wrestlers now that you mainly stuck with them, or?
Well, yeah, they had more, I don't want to say storylines, because now we have more storylines than we do as far as wrestling. And a lot of things were new, like some of them were coming out, it was before they started wearing face paint, the flashy costumes, and so on. It was just, you had your little feuds, and that was...
I would say back in the day, storytelling was the big part of wrestling in the match, where you felt what that wrestler was feeling.
Right.
Compared to today, it's more about the flashy, jumpy stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
And there's a place for it in wrestling. But, so, without further ado, I'll start off first. So then we'll get into some of your older wrestlers. And we'll go from there. Now, my number 10, starting from the bottom up. Number 10, one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, and he's not that well known, was Big Daddy V. Big old Daddy V. Or better known as Viscera, also known as Mabel. Was he all that popular? No, but I really got into his gimmick when he was playing the Playboy, when he was trying to get Trish Stratus. He came out in the pajamas, and I don't know, something about him being a big guy, as big as he was. I think he was like 500 pounds at one point, and the mohawk. I mean, he wasn't the greatest, I would say, charisma. I think charisma probably hurt him the most.
Yeah.
And plus, when he was Mabel, for those of you who remember who he was when he was Mabel, Nelson Frazier Jr. is his real name, by the way. He died a couple years back from a heart attack. God rest his soul. He injured The Undertaker, forced The Undertaker to wear a face mask during King of the Ring, and that really killed his push after that. Yes, he still ended up winning King of the Ring, but when you hurt The Undertaker, you're not going to be the most popular guy in the locker room no more.
True.
Now, what do you know who I'm talking about? You remember him?
Yes, I remember Viscera.
You remember Viscera. And then he would actually end up going on to join the Ministry of Darkness with The Undertaker later on down the road.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting how that turned out. Now, next on my list, another man that's probably not going to be that popular with everybody, but he is a current day wrestler. It's Mr. Jinder Mahal. Yes, that's right. Yeah, you can laugh it up all you want, but Mr. Jinder Mahal, and I'm going to tell you why that is. I probably got into him really when he became the WWE champion. He beat Randy Orton, and that's where I really started to follow him. He really knows how to play a heel very well. He don't have that go-away heat like I would say King Corbin has a go-away heat. I mean, King Corbin is a true heel, but it is that go-away heat where people don't like him because they just want him to go away. And Jinder Mahal don't have that. Oh, you don't like King Corbin? Bow down to the king, all that stuff?
No, I'm talking about Jinder.
Oh, no, well, Jinder's been away for quite some time. He comes back from a knee injury, and only to realize that the doctor did his knee wrong, so he's back out again on injury after he was just getting ready to get a face push, or start out as a face push but into a heel push. Come into the camera a little bit more, Michelle. Stop being so shy.
I'm stuck over
Let
here.
me just adjust this just a little bit. There we go. That way you don't have so much of me. You get some of Michelle in there too. So that's number 9. Number 8 on my list is the Big Red Machine, Kane. I got his book. I haven't read it yet. Male Kane. Kane is one of the smartest individuals in wrestling. If you watch anything backstage, I watched Table for 3 on the WWE Network, where he's talking to Mark Henry in the Big Show, and you really get to see why he is a mayor of Knox County right now, and he's into politics. The man is a smart man.
Well, I agree with that. He is very smart. I've noticed there's been wrestlers that are leaving and going into politics. You got Rhino.
Yep.
You had Jesse Ventura, which he's one of the older ones too.
I remember Jesse Ventura.
And so you know, they've been leaving and they've been going into politics. So just because they're wrestlers, you know, people look at them and think, well, they're just big old dumb wrestlers. But they're not. They're really smart men.
And Kane is a very good example of that, to say the least. Now, Kane's had a couple of different appearances, I should say, different attires, different versions of Kane.
Right.
Michelle, which version of Kane is your favorite?
I like the version. I can't talk today. The version of when he come back, when he was Kane, the Kane. When he was the Undertaker, he come back as Undertaker's brother.
When he debuted.
I like that Kane the best, probably because that's the way that he was introduced, and that's the persona that I look at him as. And I like the other Kane too, but he just puts on a more menacing atmosphere when he comes out as
the masked Kane of old, where he wasn't able to talk.
Right.
Now, for me, I like the version of Kane when he took off his mask and he began to have the shaved head and he was talking. And to me, that was the more menacing version of Kane. And then it's a matter of opinion. It's neither right or wrong. Everybody has a version of Kane they like. I don't think everybody likes the corporate Kane, but I do like the Kane that was. He was talking. He had no mask no more. You could see his emotions. And I'm gonna tell you right now, the amount of talent it would take for Kane back in the day to not have any voice, not to have any emotion being able to be transpired. And when I was watching the podcast with Stone Cold Steve Austin with Kane on it, which by the way, if you haven't went and seen that, go see that because you learn a lot.
Yeah.
He talks about how he was learning that and how he was learning to do the head tilt and things like that, because when Kane did the head tilt, you knew stuff was about to go down.
Right.
Now, number 7 is money, 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 money. I don't have the best singing voice, so don't unsubscribe for that. That's not going to happen again. $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. Now, see, I know some old school wrestlers too. Now, it's not just on one side of here. I got some old wrestlers on my list. You know, I know what I'm talking about in the wrestling world. What are you about to say?
Well, he was still around when you were young and started watching wrestling, so that's why you know who he is.
Well, I known him from the older stuff too, because I had an old WrestleMania 5 where Hogan went against Macho Man Randy Savage. I'm the cream of the top. And anyway, so you see, I knew who he was anyway. Now I kind of researched him. I have met Ted DiBiase in person twice. He is a wonderful human being outside of the wrestling world. You probably got some good stories of Ted DiBiase. What would be one of your favorite moments with him in the wrestling world?
Well, with him, he wasn't. At one time, he was in the Four Horsemen.
See, now I didn't know that.
Yeah. At one time, he come into the Four Horsemen, into that group. And I watched him progress as he went up. But he really didn't make it to where you'd say top persona, recognizable a lot, until he became the $6 million man. he come out and of course, he'd buy everything, what he wanted, and then he got Virgil to be his assistant or whatever and things. So that's when he really started to become popular, was when he got older and into the $6 million man. $6 million, yeah, that's right.
$1 million man.
$1 million man.
Apparently, I know more about the wrestler than she does now.
Now, I just forgot how much he was worth.
Now, one of my favorite things is when him and Andre was kind of going at it, and he had Jake the Snake on his side, and Andre was scared. Andre was on $1 Million Man's side. I apologize. And him and Andre was teaming up together, and just watching him interact with Jake the Snake when Jake the Snake was real big, and shout out to Jake the Snake in AEW now doing his thing with Lance Archer. One of the best talkers in the world.
Oh, yeah.
Jake the Snake, one of the best talkers on the world. And the $1 Million Man, he's one of the best talkers in the world, too. I mean, he could go and go and go. And, just to meet him in person and know this, I mean, these guys play characters in the ring. So, just to meet the man and know how he is today and, how he's different from back then. Because he'll tell you how he was back then and how he is now. And, it's just a big difference and a big change role. Number 6, now I might get some criticism on this one to have this man so low on my list, but I have The Undertaker sitting just outside my top 5, and I'm going to explain why that is. Yes, The Undertaker is one of the greatest of all time in the ring performers, but I've never considered myself a very grim or dark type of person, so I always had trouble getting into his character for the longest time. And I did like the Minister of Darkness version of him. He was real dark, he was real menacing. He kind of took on more life compared to his older, his debut version.
Right.
And I didn't get into the motorcycle version, the American Badass he called himself.
Yes.
Because I was never really into motorcycles either. So, but I do understand the talent that he has, and I really respect him as a legend as he is. And I look for him after this year to go into the Hall of Fame now that he has pretty much announced his retirement from in-ring competition.
If he doesn't, he should be. Now, with The Undertaker, I don't have him on my list. But with him, I watched him from the beginning when he started up until, of course, now that he's retired. And I liked the Order of Darkness when he come out. But with him, with his character, the way he comes out, you just focus on him. Now, with both characters that he had, which I do like motorcycles too. The one thing that I liked him, I think, a little bit better when he was the badass than I do, as the Undertaker persona. But he's better known for being the Undertaker in the Order of Darkness. And, the match he just had with AJ Styles.
Oh, yeah, the Boneyard match.
The Boneyard match. That was a hell of a match. Excuse my language, but that was a hell of a match.
And, it was such a good match that now that they come out with these cinematic matches, which when you was talking about, they can't do very much new, and that's what a lot of people don't understand is, wrestling in period has been around for so long. There's not too much that you can do now that has not been done before.
That's right.
And coming out with these cinematic matches in a time period that we're living in, WWE, and then when the AEW came out, that's what they was comparing. What's AEW doing compared to WWE? Well, WWE came out with the first set of cinematic matches that I can recall. Maybe there was something else that came out. I don't know. That being said, that does it for my top 5. Now, at the top. Before we get into Michelle's, once again, hit that like, hit that subscribe button. Tell me what your top, first 5 of wrestlers of all time, or where would you put The Undertaker on my list, or any of these wrestlers, or what are some wrestlers that we already forgotten and gotten into? Now, Michelle, starting from number 10, let's start getting into your wrestling list.
Well, I put number 10, I put Hulk Hogan coming up. Not to say that he's a great wrestler, but he had some good matches, like with Andre the Giant, Ric Flair. But he knows how to pump the audience up.
Charisma.
And if you're a wrestler, even the indie wrestlers, which I go to a lot of their shows, if we ever get opened back up. But you have to know how to work the crowd. And Hulk Hogan knew how to work the crowd. And that's why I put him at number 10, as one of my top
10, yeah.
Top 10.
Yeah, and that's the thing about Hulk Hogan. He's actually high up on my list, so we will be talking about Hulk Hogan again. He is high up on my list. And, and he's probably, if he was going to go, my top 5 is going to be my Mount Rushmore of wrestling, by the way. And I do have some honorable mentions that I'll talk about here before the video ends. Michelle, what about your number 9?
Number 9, I put down Jimmy Valiant. As most of you guys that's been around as long as I have been, he's better known as AKA the Boogie Woogie Man. He'd come out and he'd dance, he'd work, interact with the crowd. He was just crazy is what he was. But again, he works with the crowd and got up there, and he could wrestle. It wasn't just come out and work the crowd up and go, but he could wrestle. He could wrestle
as well. He's still alive today, isn't he not?
As far as I know, he still is. I'm not really for sure.
I can't say that I'm familiar with him, but I know you was watching him one time and I caught him on the TV. Me and Michelle go way back. We know each other. And, but I've seen him dance on the floor, in the ring, around the ring. Number 8.
Well, number 8, I put down, anyway. I got Blackjack Mulligan.
Blackjack Mulligan. That's Bray Wyatt's dad, is it not?
Yes, and Bo Dallas's dad. And he's also, he's their grandfather. But he's Barry and Kendall Windham's dad.
Oh. Now, he's part of the tag team, right? Was he a tag team?
He was tag team, but he wrestled on his own, too. He come out with the hat and the cowboy boots and so on.
Okay. See, we're getting some wrestlers that I don't know about. Go look them up on Google, or I'm sure there's matches on WWE Network. We didn't help each other make these lists, so the knowledge you're getting is the knowledge that we know about them. And it's very legit here at the Jamez Report. So number 7?
Number 7 I got down as Wahoo McDaniels. Chief Wahoo McDaniels. I liked him as being a Native American myself. He brought in the Native American to it as same. There was another tag team match group, but I don't remember their names right offhand. But, a lot of the wrestlers, we have to understand, they were famous in football before they come in. And he held the NWA U.S. Heavyweight Champion, held it 5 times for being an American Indian. And you have to remember back then, you wasn't getting a lot of, Native Americans, and then
African Americans.
Yeah, African Americans. I mean, you had Junkyard Dog, and he's another one that could go on the list too. So I looked up to Wahoo because
of his heritage.
Because of his heritage, and so on.
All right, and now, right before we get into your top 5, who's sitting at number 6?
Harley Race.
Oh, Harley Race. Recently passed away.
Yes, he did, bless his heart.
And, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, no, that's okay. Harley Race and Ric Flair went back and forth. I can't tell you which one held the title the most, because it seemed like one would have it, and then the next time the other one would have it. So they just more or less, they had the battles going on between them for many, 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 many years.
Now, what I understand from Harley Race is, when backstage talk and things like that, he was a man.
Yes, he was.
He didn't care. You fought through the pain. You did what you had. You went out there and did your job. You didn't show no pain. You stayed in kayfabe. You didn't break character in public.
Right.
But when you was behind the scene with the boys, he was a man's man. You didn't mess with him. There's a lot of older wrestlers that way. You didn't mess with a lot of older wrestlers back then.
No, you didn't, because, well, I remember one time, I don't remember his name, but a reporter asked a wrestler, said, everybody says this is fake. Well, he found out it wasn't fake because the dude hauled off and slapped him, knocked him to the ground, and said, "Is that fake, boy?" You know, I'll look that up, but I don't remember his name right off the hand. You know.
And there's a lot of situations like that. I mean, there's a lot of things that people don't understand that who are not fans of wrestling. And us wrestling fans, we know it's all for entertainment now.
Right.
But we also know that injuries do happen. We also know that hey, when you get put through a table that hunts, they are taking steel shots to the back
Right.
or the sides or whatever. Do they do the best they can to protect themselves? And anyone who's a wrestler knows that, yes, there are ways to protect each other and to make it look real.
Yeah.
But you can't avoid everything, and
Right.
the Ric Flair chops were real.
Oh,
And
yes.
when you hear a chop, that's one of the most realest things that you see in a wrestling ring and or feel in a wrestling ring.
Yes, they were real. And I've seen many a men wear the marks of Ric Flair on their chest.
Now going forward, Michelle, since we're getting down to the end of our list, we'll have you start off with your number 5, and then I'll answer with my number 5, and we'll just go back and forth like that.
Okay, well, number 5 I got down is Dusty Rhodes,
The American Dream.
the American Dream. He came out. He was another one that could work the crowd. He could work the crowd, but he was a simple man, like he said. You know, he come out. He was for the people, for the poor people, and he was just. I don't know. He was a comedian, and a lot of people took that for granted, but he'd drop you in a heartbeat. You know, he'd drop you in a heartbeat.
American Dream Dusty Rhodes. He had a good long stint down in Florida, I do believe, with Sullivan. And
Yeah.
that was a very surreal put on show. People really thought, when they was doing the eye for the eye match with Seth Rollins and Rey Mysterio,
Right.
I thought that might be a way they could have went, was when Sullivan put the spike through Dusty Rhodes' eye.
Right.
And to do that back then,
Yes, that was.
and to pull it off,
Yeah.
because as anyone knows, Dusty Rhodes still had both eyes. So, I mean, there's a lot of things they did back then that a lot of people don't realize that happened, that WWE has repeated, or even AEW has repeated, that has been done before, that now we're going back in history and taking things and making them, modernizing it.
Right, because back then you weren't allowed to do such things as that in the wrestling ring. So that, come out. And a lot of people didn't know that Dusty was also a booker. He booked matches, and he was a trainer.
Well, look at NXT. A lot of, like, Sasha came up under Dusty Rhodes. Charlotte came up under Dusty Rhodes. There's a lot of people that came up that's wrestling now on the main roster that was his job to teach them to talk on the microphone, because you couldn't find anyone who could just cut a promo as good
Right.
as Dusty Rhodes,
Right.
and be as charismatic. And I think really that's what came down to, Dusty Rhodes he wasn't the best in shape competitor,
No.
but he was someone you could relate to.
Yeah, you could relate. Sorry, I'm sorry.
No, by all means.
No, you could relate to him. You looked at him as one of you.
You knew you could sit down and have a conversation with Dusty. You see him out in public.
Yeah.
And had no problem with that. Now, number 5 on my list is Le Champion, Chris Jericho. And the fact that Chris Jericho has made my Mount Rushmore is the fact that you look of how many times he has changed his character to adapt and modernized it. From all the way from back to WCW, even before that when he was wrestling in Indies and down in Mexico. You follow his career. And you talk about somebody who has the respect of the whole wrestling industry. I can't think of anyone who does not like Chris Jericho, per se. I know him and Brock Lesnar have had the issues. And I know Goldberg, I can say that Goldberg and Chris Jericho do not get along. But for the most part, everyone seems to get along with him.
Yeah, they do. And he's got this serious side to him. And he's got this nutty side to him when, like, you made the list,
Yeah.
And so, I mean, he is a very serious wrestler, and he takes his wrestling serious. and that's what I like about him.
And that's the thing in AEW. He is a coach there, because I remember reading a story where he brought back all the tag teams when AEW first began,
Right.
and said, "Look, you can't do this. You have to be more compared." And just the other night, he was live on Facebook, and I watched him, and he said that the 10-man match didn't go the way he wanted it to go, but he was very professional about it. And that's the thing about Chris. If you make him angry, he will speak his mind.
Yeah.
But he is a professional through and through, and he appreciates the fans, and he knows it's the fans that make the business.
It is. That's where some wrestlers I've noticed, watching it through as long as I have, without the fans, you ain't got nothing. Whether, they either love you or they hate you. But if you don't have the fans, then you're not making it.
It's just like the fans that come in and tune in and watch these videos that we're doing right now, that I'm doing right now. And I've told them before, I appreciate everything you guys do when you come in and tune in and watch these videos, because it helps. Yes, it helps out the channel, and it helps get YouTube to notice this Jamez report.
Right.
And that's why I always say, hit that like and hit that subscribe button, because subscribing is absolutely free. And I'm always open to suggestions. If you want me to do something, I will do it. If you want to have a conversation with me, I'll have a conversation with you. If you can tell me I'm wrong, you can tell me I'm wrong. This podcast is just like the WWE, to the extent that it is about the fans, and I want to do things to make you guys happy, and I will challenge your way of thinking, though. That's why this list is made personally from each other, of who we think is the top, and everybody has their own list, and not every list is the same. That being said, hit me with your number 4.
I got Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. I remember Ricky.
Yes, because he was coming out. Well, he'd been in there for a while, but he was one of them that started. He'd come out with the dragon wings, and he'd come out, and he was a very good acrobatic wrestler. And I remember a story he told one time that Ric Flair come in, and nothing against Ric Flair. We've all had our days, but Ric Flair come in, been out all night partying, and he said, we can't have a match. He's been out. And Rick said, just give me about 5 cups of coffee, we'd be good. And so that was the best match. That was the best match that they put on together. They went the whole distance and really battled each other. And but he was a good wrestler and been in it for a very long time.
Him and Macho Man had a good rivalry.
Yes, they did. Macho Man and him had a good rivalry.
Steve Austin had a rivalry with him in WCW.
Right in WCW, they had a rivalry going. In fact, I think that's the one that Steve was in, and he said, "I'm fixing to quit."
Yeah.
Yeah, if my memory, correct,
And even Chris Jericho, who I just mentioned, had a match with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat at a WrestleMania.
Yes.
And so Ricky the Dragon, he hasn't went away. He is a trainer down at NXT, the Performance Center, right now.
Right.
My number 4 is Randy Orton, the Legend Killer. Now, I'm going to get into this, so bear with me. Randy Orton, and you can disagree, you can agree, whatever, but Randy Orton is probably the most underrated talent, legend, from a legend status, the most underrated future Hall of Famer out there right now. When you think of wrestlers, you think of Edge, you think of that grew up in the time period that Randy Orton came in, which was the Ruthless Aggression era.
Right.
You think John Cena, you think Batista, you think Edge, you think of Evolution, Ric Flair, and Triple H. You think Shawn Michaels. So the people, he is still going. He's one of the few that's still from the Ruthless Aggression era that's still performing on a regular basis.
Right.
And yeah, and Randy Orton, kind of like Chris Jericho did, but Randy Orton's kind of twisted it back around. But there for a while, Randy Orton, he couldn't play a heel, he couldn't play a face, because he had gained so much respect from the fans that you couldn't really hate him, but you couldn't really love him either when he was a heel, because you knew you wanted to play along. And that's what Chris Jericho is too. And I think that's one thing Chris Jericho has to figure out to do right now is how to get himself into a position where people will hate him because he is to play a heel on AEW. With Randy Orton, how do you become one of the most hated people again in this pandemic, for one? And two, you do it by what he did last week when he said that he was better than Stone Cold Steve Austin. He was better than The Rock. You attack favorites like that people love and respect, because Stone Cold is very respected in the wrestling industry. Instead of taking out, and you can still see Stone Cold Steve Austin stepping in the ring if he chose to do so.
Yes.
And The Rock has always stepped in the ring. So you could see a future match there. I'm not saying that's going to happen, so don't put writing on it.
No. But, and you got to remember, too, Randy's a third-generation wrestler. Now, I never seen his grandpa, but I seen his dad, Cowboy Bill, up.
Bob Orton, yeah.
Yeah. And, man never took a cast off. He had a cast on every time you seen him, But so he is a third generation. I don't think Randy gets the respect that he really should be getting. And no, I'm not saying that because he's third generation. I'm saying that because he's got talent. He's got talent there. And he just, especially with the RKO, man, he can hit you with that anywhere. It don't matter, and you never know when it's coming. It's just there.
And you see a lot of people who may not even watch wrestling that much, they do that move in videos.
Yeah.
And they pull off a lot of Randy Orton's stunt. And it is true, Randy Orton can wrestle.
Oh, yes.
But he has his own way of doing it now. And he is older now. And yeah, you can tell he's slowed down. But he's slowed down to tell the story.
Right.
He's slowed down to make you feel like, and that's another thing they've been doing. They've been telling this Randy Orton arc very well.
Yeah.
Because you have him go against Edge, who just returned, and hurt him. You wanted to see Edge get the upper hand and beat Randy Orton at WrestleMania.
Yes.
Then you get him in the greatest wrestling match of all time. Now, we knew that was just, they wasn't saying that was the greatest match of all time.
No.
But they were saying that so you would be interested to get involved in the match. And unfortunately, Edge did get hurt to not be able to continue the storyline that they had going. But Orton would go on to win the match, and then to take out the Big Show, which, do you think that was Big Show's last match? Because he hints at retiring all the time, but do you think that was his way of getting out of the business for good?
No, I can see him still coming back.